only the presentation session. Okay, let's start.
Okay, let's
First, I would
start.
like to convey greetings from our Dean, Katarzyna. Um, thank you very much for your willingness to join, to accept our invitations in this very important meetings. Yeah, and I would like to introduce myself first. My name Muhammad Abdul Herasri. I'm the lecturer at the Faculty of Philosophy, Mahasiswa College. Yeah, I am in Eastern Philosophy Department and with the specific area in philosophy of religions and philosophy of language. Yeah, and before we start, I would like to introduce our speakers, to our all participant here. I guess not only come from Indonesia, not only come from our faculty members, our faculty students, because we we post the flyers in our Instagram and the followers not only from our university. Yeah, I think we reach the broader participants today. And first, I would like to introduce Professor Katarzyna Bilinska. Yeah, I just want to call her Katarzyna. Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong in spelling your name in Polish. Yeah, Katarzyna. Yeah. She is an assistant professor in the Department of Ethics at the Faculty of Philosophy, University of Warsaw. Her current research interests include uncovered global and environmental bioethics, social and political ethics, social philosophy, and political philosophy. And some of her recent works that already published in 2026 at Philosophia Journal titled What is Peripheral Philosophy? And that was our main material for today's meetings. And Freedom, Self-Governance, Revolutions, the Philosophy of Praxis in Yugoslavia, published in 20 and 25. And also with Marx Against a Double Imperialist Agenda, Cesar, Memis, and Fanon's Decoloniality Reinterpreted, published in 2025. And our second speaker, Rangga Kalamahaswa, he is an assistant professor in the Department of Western Philosophy at the Faculty of Philosophy Gajah Mada University Indonesia. And since 2025, he has been developing what's so-called CHASGEO. I think this is new for Indonesian philosophical public. Yeah, Center for Anthropocene Studies and Geophilosophy. Yeah, as a part of his PhD project. Yeah, now he's currently on the progress to finish his PhD in the School of Geographical and Earth Sciences, University of Glasgow, with a specific interest in geophilosophy and Anthropocene. And not only geophilosophy and Anthropocene, he also has archipelagic thinking's focus and the other Anthropocene discourse. And his recent publication include The Pluriverse of Anthropocene, One Earth and Many Worlds, yeah, as published in Catalan 2023, The Anthropocene Reef and Social Policy, Rethinking Ontological and Epistemological Perspective, Bio-Inspired Technology and the Uncanny Anthropocene, and the last one, Questioning Local Wisdom in Indonesian Indigenous Research. I think this last one's very important for us, yeah, to re-examine or to think in, because Mahasiswa have a lot of stuff regarding the problem regarding what is the stagnations behind development of Nusantara philosophy or Indonesian philosophy. So before we begin, let me also briefly share why these meetings already set, yeah, and the background of this event. As I mentioned before, I found around at the end of April, your article, Katarzyna, what is peripheral philosophy? And whoa, I got a lot of new insight, yeah, because you re-questioning the current or the gigantic scholars such as Mignolo and so on and so forth. So it is aligned with our needs in Indonesia to have a robust, to have a clear understanding in decolonialisms and how to apply the decolonialism in our needs in our projects. Yeah. So this is my personal hypothesis, Katarzyna and Mahaswa. Yeah. Of course, guys, you can also agree or disagree with that. Yeah. My hypothesis is to build a unique philosophy or what's so called in Indonesia, Indonesian philosophy or Nusantara philosophy. It is hard to avoid the imaginations about the others, about the Western as the as the antagonistic side, yeah, in doing philosophy. Because when we do Nusantara philosophy and also Indonesian philosophy, we have some kind like decolonializing and emancipating, yeah, things, and we practice the decolonizations and emancipations, yeah, within an ideological framework, yeah, because we know in Indonesia it is very close links with between Indonesian philosophical project with the state interests in terms of ideology interests, because okay, in Indonesia we have state-sponsored philosophy, that everything related to the development of the philosophy itself, for example, Indonesian philosophy, should be aligned with the ideal norms of the state that we call it Pancasila, for example. Yeah. And I think that is the most challenging things that we need to rethink, yeah, when we develop Nusantara philosophy. So without further ado, let's start these meetings, but we will start from Katarzyna first with 30 minutes allocations for your presentations, and we'll follow by Maswa and with the same durations, 30 minutes. Okay, Katarzyna, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Once again, good afternoon to everybody. It's also 9 o'clock here. Thank you very much for your kind invitation. And let me say that it is an honor to me to speak to the public from the University of Gajah Mada. And thank you, Odi, for all effort to organize this event. As you have already, and thank you obviously for all warm words about my work. Thank you very much once again. As you have already said, I will focus on the core argument I developed in the paper published in Philosophia a couple of months ago. What is peripheral philosophy? In this paper, I identify and subject to criticism the geospatial model of peripheral philosophy and propose an alternative account of peripheral philosophy. That is how I call it, knowledge circulation model. Yes. So, first, I will discuss that geospatial model briefly in three thinkers: Polish philosopher and historian of ideas Eugeniusz Górski, the Chilean philosopher Eduardo Deves Valdes, and an Argentine North American philosopher Walter Mignolo. Then I will present that critique and finally sketch that knowledge, that proposal of knowledge circulation model. Geospatial model has its roots In, fa in famous Philosophy of Liberation by Enrique Dussel, an Argentine philosopher, uh, in his book, he describes philosophy of liberation as philosophy from the periphery, from the oppressed, from the shadow that the light of being has not been able to illumine. This philosophy is produced in so-called global peripheries. So it is philosophy carried out from specific geopolitically determined areas as we see them here on a scheme from Dussel's book. Yeah, you see, can you see?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So geopolitical space becomes a central category here. Polish historian of ideas, Eugeniusz Górski, writes about thinking from the point of view of the periphery and points to, quote again, close connection with the history of the peoples of these regions with their national liberation struggles. That is, he points to its emancipatory character, we may say, per se. And it is important that peripheral philosophy is distinguished and perceived as fundamentally different from the philosophy from the center. And the center includes Western European or North American philosophy. That centrality of geopolitical space, in my opinion, marks a break with Marxist theory, dependency theory, or world system theory, which all discussing center-peripheries relations make central the category of labor. Let's quote Immanuel Wallerstein, a quote, "A capitalist world economy was said to be marked by an actual division of labor between core-like production processes and peripheral production processes. In word systems analysis, core periphery is a relational concept, not a pair of terms that are reified, that is, have separate essential meanings." However, geospatial model counters this approach and makes what we may call an anti-materialist turn. Subsequently, the center-periphery relations in this model are frozen in their binarity. So this model builds on the binary opposition between Western and modern philosophy that is produced in Western Europe and North America, and peripheral produced elsewhere. And again, the very peripheral thought is also marked by a binary opposition between the original, indigenous, national, anti-Western, how we call it, current, and Westernizing, modernizing current. In Górski, you see here, this is a book published in Mexico and titled Dependency and Originality of Philosophy in Latin America and Eastern Europe. This current opposing to Westernization is exemplified by Slavophilia in case of Russia and indigenismo in Latin America, broadly understood as that philosophy not only as what we understand as indigenous philosophies, but as that current of Latin American philosophy which focuses on its originality and dating back long before. Eduardo de Valdez, that Chilean philosopher I have already mentioned, who interestingly draws from Gursky, he proposes a broader model. He aims to encompass philosophy all over the world, yeah? And he defines peripheral thinking, because he's using the term peripheral thinking, as a thought that emerged within communities, impacted by the presence of the new center, while witnessing the traditional understanding of the world that they possessed become unhinged. He introduces the concept, the term peripheral dilemma, and that peripheral dilemma lies in the dilemma of being like a center or being ourselves. And being like a center, which fits in that pro-Western current, is called by him centralitarianism, and being ourselves as identitarism. And finally, Walter Mignolo, the key figure of the first generation of Latin American decolonial school. And his well-known thesis, drawn from a Peruvian author, Aníbal Quijano, about the inseparatedness of modernity and coloniality. Coloniality is here distinguished from colonialism. Coloniality refers to a totality of power relations formed in the historical process of colonization and persisting despite of formal and political end of colonialism. Coloniality permeates all realms of reality. So the colonial thinkers write about coloniality of power, coloniality of knowledge, or coloniality of being. They form altogether colonial matrix of power. Interestingly, that modernity combined with coloniality encompasses not only conservatism, liberalism, or Christianity, but also socialism and Marxism. So the coloniality requires delinking from all of them, and another parallel act to delinking is an act of epistemic disobedience. Yeah? Epistemic disobedience, which refers to breaking with Western lines of thinking, both in the area in philosophy and also in political area. That this concept is quite ambiguous. And this model, this geospatial model, carries two specific risks. The first one, already pointed by Elias Palti in his recent book on Latin American philosophy 2024, it may strengthen stereotypes and prejudices about peripheral philosophies, and this can be followed by its culturalization, essentialization, or even exotization. So this is the first risk. And the second, that it can blur the actual dialectics of philosophy of emancipatory struggles and lead to geopolitical essentialism, and finally end up in adopting by those philosophies or aligning with adopting the function of those philosophies of or aligning with ideologies of Western, non-Western, of non-Western imperialisms and nationalism. And Mignolo's opus shows us how those risks can become real. Mary Davidson, in her groundbreaking paper on the concept of the pluriverse, on the pluriverse in Walter Mignolo and the European New Right, conducted a comparative analysis of this concept in Mignolo's writings on the one hand, and Alexander Dugin, the ideologist of Putin's Russia, and Alain de Benoit, the key intellectual of the French New Right. And she pointed to certain similarities. She also explored the relation between decoloniality and the Westernization in Mignolo's writings. I'm sorry. In Mignolo's writings, Mignolo tends to distinguish them, but exploring that relation, she finally concludes that the Westernization is the first step and the coloniality is the second. And the concept of the Westernization is the concept which Mignolo shares, for instance, with aforementioned Alexander Dugin. And he perceives the Westernization as a state-led project realized by such states like Russia or China, which strive for a de-Westernizing, interstate, multipolar revolution. Yeah. And it was a quote. And another quote: "For this reason, the linking today follows two major routes. The coloniality, the linking from state forms of governance, and the Westernization, the linking from Westernization and confronting re-Westernization by means of strong states." At the end of the quote. On a more concrete level, for instance, in 2017, for example, he observed conflicts between re-Westernization and de-Westernization in, quote, Ukraine, Syria, and North Korea. And it is particular, this approach is particularly visible in his recent writings produced after the full-scale aggression of Russia against Ukraine, and this is actually particularly important for people in our region. Yeah. So as I write, in short, the real ideological function of Mignolo's theory would appear to be to justify and legitimize non-Western imperialist power regimes, first and foremost Russia and China, along with other BRICS states. So, rejecting the geospatial model and in search for the concept of peripheral philosophy, which would be materialist, dialectical, and relational, I proposed to define peripheral philosophy in terms of knowledge circulation. And here is the definition. Peripheral philosophy is philosophy situated on the outskirts of the global circulation of philosophical production. What I understand by philosophical production: intellectual labor process of creating and expressing philosophical ideas, whether in books, papers, lectures, or any other form, physical or digital, whereby a product results. And parallelly, by circulation of philosophical production, I understand circulation of those same philosophical products, and both production and circulation are subject to capitalist mechanisms. Yeah. And let's have a look how it looks like. Sorry, here. So the philosophical production of a center is widely known, cited. We can measure it with bibliometric tools. This is spreading to the peripheries. However, the movement the other way around is rather limited. Only some filtered elements can get into the center. And this central philosophical production tends to reproduce itself, enclose, and obviously it is creating barriers of access, which include, for instance, the language barrier or the form or the form barrier. And so this is about the philosophy of the center. And then what about the peripheral philosophy? By analogy, it is less cited, less recognized, which can be also measured. This production is dispersed. It is lacking mechanisms of systemic reproduction, very diverse linguistically and formally. And also it remains its relation to the core is of that type that it may lead to a kind of philosophical development of underdevelopment. Yes, and and last but not least, the relations between the relations within the area of philosophy actually are quite far away from the smooth, from the idea of smooth South-South dialogue, yeah, which about which it has been written so much, because there are also emerging sub-centers which have their own peripheries, Additionally, yeah, there are also semi-peripheries. Additionally, within the area of traditional central philosophy, we can find spots of peripheralities. So, in general, uh, we may call it a kind of constellation. Uh, in an analogous sense to Andre Gunder Frank, who was writing about a constellation model of world economics. So this knowledge circulation model is not is not carrying the risks I mentioned earlier, or carries them to a lesser extent, and lets us to capture the centrality and peripherality of philosophy in its complex changing dynamics, rather than see things through the essentializing abstract opposition between the West and the rest. Thank you very much. I'll stop here.
Well, thank you, Katarzyna, for your materials, for your presentations. Now we will move to Rangga Kalamaswa. The time is yours,
Hi, Mark.
Maswa.
Can I share my presentations probably?
Yeah, of course.
Just wait.
You want to share it by yourself or you need
Just wait.
assistant?
I think I can do by myself. Just wait. I got
Okay,
some
you already set
Just
as
wait.
co-host.
All right. Thank you. Okay. May you see my presentation or not? Mm.
On my screen, it's still Katarzyna's
Oh
screen.
yeah. Just wait. I'm so sorry. Just
Hello,
wait.
Katarzyna? Okay,
Okay. Can you
yeah,
see it?
yeah,
All
already
right.
seen.
Okay.
Okay.
Is this fine?
I had some technical issues, sorry.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, no problem.
All right. Thank you very much. For having me here. I guess that the first thing I would like to clarify, I just read your paper actually, the Belinska about this new idea for me actually talking about the peripheral philosophy, and then Odi asked me that this is probably also can make reflections, probably critical reflections on the progress of Indonesian philosophy, especially because of somehow when we talk about Indonesian philosophy, we always linking with the decoloniality movement somehow, and also taking place again to how that we can speak our philosophical concept uh, from the beginnings. And then in this presentation, I would like to share, maybe it is a little bit thought-provoking for myself, and I hope somebody can add more elaborating idea or probably insight and also critics about Indonesian philosophy, because the development of philosophy in a certain area can be good if we would like to mostly giving more critics and also explanations how that the way to develop their own philosophical method, for example. So I'm starting with the popular map of philosophy from Ted Hendricks. It is coming from the convenience of philosophy, come from the Oxford. They have the idea about the inner authors, or maybe probably we always refer to the core and also extended area of the philosophy. And somehow this idea also inspiring by some Indonesian thinker, probably Indonesian philosopher, when they try to make their own the argumentations of a philosophy by themselves. So in that positions, probably not only talk about the core and also the peripherals way, but always in the differentiations between the two, the binary of the idea. It is like in the legacy of colonials, we trying to dividing between the West and also in the East. Indonesian is part of the East, is always giving more like in the value, wisdom and anything like that. So I just make a sum of a little bit the conclusions probably, but maybe also the Katalinsa, the Belenska also pros about the alternative concept that she also mentioned before about the peripheral philosophy as a philosophy that is located on the peripheral of the global circulations of the philosophical production. So the key word is about the knowledge circulations means that we have to know when we talk about the philosophy, it is also always engaging with the how we define and also how that we criticize about the knowledge itself. So what is knowledge, where is knowledge coming from, and then how that the knowledge is also constructed by who and where and whom's also. So actually, as I know that you also inspiring by some of the thinkers like Gorski, Valdez, and also Mignolo, talking about the geospatiality concept that how that we again that is probably every single of the peripheral philosophy also included some of risk area or probably some of the inherent issues in themselves. So inspiring from the Korsky, the Valdez, and also the Magnolo, trying to combining and also elaborating three of them from the peripheral thinkings and also for more likely for myself when I read your paper, I see that it is most likely the how that we know about the circulations of knowledge. It means that on the perspective of the sociology of the knowledge itself. And the end also you mentioned about the decolonial thinking and also on the pluriversal words. It is probably also as one way to defining how that the many words of knowledge is also coming from many areas or probably also heightenings and not only based on our understanding of the word but also somehow also inspiring coming from the outside itself. So thank you very much for this introduction, I guess. And then I also would like to highlight again, probably Indonesian scholars can learn a lot from you because of you also give us some of the idea that is probably we also facing some of the problem in themselves, especially for the peripheral philosophy. It is about the distorting the idea. It's probably also when we trying to make our own the philosophy is always being there is only one and then making a new center by themselves. It is probably also including about the weather of the culturalizations because of basically just talking about their own the cultural activity without considering something diverse in the outside of probably of themselves and also essentializations and I guess events about the exotizations of the non-Western philosophies. So you said about the peripheral dilemmas probably. And then it is really classical issues in Indonesian philosophy when they're starting to talk about the philosophy, always bringing against about the against Western idea, pro Western idea, just probably trying also exploring more. But I think it is not the one of the big mistake because of actually we are coming from the post-colonial countries or probably post-colonial state that that some people also still think that they can talk by themselves and then starting from what they would not like to against before, especially from the coloniality space. So even though that the many philosophers, including us, or maybe in the many peoples, they also still engage with some of many geospatial conditions like Belinska mentions about the temporality, geographical area, historical way, cultures, and even other diversities. And then as all of them is also including on there's on the dilemma when they talk about they're on the peripheral philosophy. And some of the problems is also coming from the centralitarians, identitarians, and many kinds of it. So I also learned a lot from you, especially about the subject and the condition. Means I mean that when they talk about the peripheral condition, it is also considered by the subjectivity. We cannot really away from these ideas because of even though we think about the specific area, likely in Indonesia, probably in Singapore, in Malaysia, they also depend on how that the subjects or probably the philosopher in themselves talking about their the perspective, even though in these today that we perceive probably it is speculatively only one on words, something is taking for granted about the modernity and also how that the big globalization somehow also making ourselves there is no center anymore because of now we can meet each other by using the technological way. The publication of philosophy can also unlimited the access, but the problem is again about the keeping of knowledge. So somehow we can back again upon the discussion of the open knowledge discourse in the sociology of knowledge. And also the other key point is about the knowledge about the subjects and also the reproductions of as well as the key point of it because of again and again when we talk about the knowledge is also having more questionings and also skeptical way thinking again that it's probably knowledge it is not a pure notion is coming from the nothings but it's also produced by intellectual laboring but it's also coming from the academic community but this in this area somehow that academic community and is also cannot really the productive because somehow we also facing some of the problem in these internals or probably on the internals of the academic community itself. Somehow they also cannot really having more democratic discussions about the new ideas is coming from the inside, and so somehow they're also defending their own perspective about the value of it. So somehow like the misplaced conception is also coming from it. And also idea of the philosophical mode of production somehow also is likely haunted by the capitalistic orientation. Somehow we're just publishing some of a paper because of we really need to taking granted for example, for money, for example, or probably we're just doing philosophy because of we do not really do it as a philosophical way. We just put some of idea of the philosophy and then we can call it as well as the philosophy. But yeah, it is the other the problem of it. And then also I see from your paper, it's really, really nice, I guess, how that we can talking about the peripherals, philosophers, probably the peripherality, it should be can be understood as well as the creditables and also measurables. Likely, we can search more by using the Google Scholars metric, for examples. The problem is somehow because of we have a different languages, for example. Mostly in Indonesian philosophy, they use Bahasa Indonesia or probably Indonesian language when they are producing their own mind or their own thoughts. So it is still unrecognized on the global or probably international scholars. But the problem it is not only about the languages barriers, but also about the priority of the projects. For example, from higher education or probably for probably from the stage, probably how that they think importance about the philosophy discussions in the public, for examples. So another way, it is also as well as the one of the very obstacles to make feasibility in the term of knowledge circulation model, right? So somehow before we publishing of knowledge about the philosophy is also still engagement of the censorship probably in some of the state they also making the philosophy as part of the way to define or probably to defining again about the ideological orientation. So philosophy with the censorship is somehow also being one of a problem for us, and then it is making more likely beyond extent of the peripherals, but somehow it is also unspeakable of thoughts. And then it is making more about the emergence of global knowledge circulation at the same time. And what is kind of and also what we can learn from a peripheral philosophy, I think in the term of Indonesians or probably Nusantara philosophy, we still trapped it in some way, likely in the essentialist stereotypicals. Why the stereotypical is still as well as the main points of the lack of Nusantara philosophy, because of Nusantara philosophy is always talking about the past, somehow it's specifically about the cultural identity, somehow they differentiate, because Indonesia, as we know, as well one of biggest island states, and also they have a lot of cultural identities. So I will show you about the map of the culture in Indonesia, and somehow also they starting by using like, yes, the coming of Indonesian philosophy, because of we would like to against anything about the Western philosophy, but paradoxically they use the method of Western's ideas. I guess I don't know exactly how to define again and again, but that is the way we can map of the Nusantara philosophy coming from their uniqueness. But again and again, I would like to introduce a bit about what is Nusantara philosophy, and then it's just likely the simples uh, when you're trying to search on the Google engines, probably we would like to see in some sort of loss of it is it's just a coming new ideas, especially when I searching it back again. This is coming either in the 1970 to 1990s. It means that is coming from in the era of the New Order era, or maybe Order Baru, means that this era is still thinking about the developing in a specific of economical way. And then at the same time, some other philosophy also inspiring by some scholars when they try to make one of state ideology, what we call like the Pancasila, five principles, and making like the more islands-oriented culture studies like Rodinal say in the beginning about the archipelagic wisdom examples, and also sharing some of story of local value or cults, as well as caravan locals on probably in the term of the more global language, we call it as is local wisdom. So wisdom means in the specific place, local as well as the area, as well as the measurement of the value itself. But some of scholars publishing in the English language, for example, Cha, Chahyandari et al. In the 2017 is trying to talk about the defining about the Indo-Nusantara philosophy has its own cosmological and philosophical treasury that serve as the guidance for the community to act, speak, and behave in each regions. The problem is again and again, Nusantara philosophy is always orienting about the cultural terms. So that is only why the Nusantara philosophy somehow also overlapping with the more anthropological research in some area. But I think it is one of the perspective that that we can imagine about the Nusantara itself. So first of all, this is the map of Indonesia, and the problem is about the many areas that we have. The problem is about that the many areas on probably islands is also separated by the water, by the sea, and then it is also affecting how that they think about themselves, and also about the disparities of the area, differentiations of the area between the main islands, the small islands, and also the center in the middle is we have Kalimantan, and also Jawa, or maybe Java, as well as the center of these Indonesians. And not only center as well as the administrative, but also affecting about how that they think about themselves. So in this area, in this Java, and also somehow also cutting back from Bali, some from geopolitical thinking said that there is really dominance on the political way, and also including when you search about Indonesian philosophy or probably Indonesian philosophy, they somehow publishing more and more about the inner between the Java or probably Bali philosophical concept. So in these terms, cultural orientation also still dominating by two terms in the Javanese islands or probably on the Balinese islands. And but in the fact, when we back then about the geospatiality, about the geographical landscape, we have a lot of many areas. They have their own speaking language, different language. A lot of the language we have a difference. But coming from in the 1945, everything is changing after we declare about the independence state, and it means that is I mean, it was separated by Indonesians themselves, and then trying to negotiate to making the new integrations on the state, being in a one-off state, and then it is read the circles. It just talk about the more of I mean, like the borders coming from the state itself. So it is we changed the language by the one of the national language in the Bahasa, and then also reducing more about the many own traditional language coming from the Manis area. So that is one of the problems when we talking about the Nusantara philosophy. Somehow we naively forget about the one of the fundamental as a basically based on the geographical the perspective. When you mentioned about the geospatiality, I also really agree that the another problem inside of peripheral, we still have the our own peripherals way. and and then also I would like to show you according to some of my research. As actually there is not a research, this is just just like the opinions for myself, and then I try to publish in several international journals. Probably you can also check it out. The main issue on the center philosophy, and then we can learn much from it because of first of all, somehow when I search on the publication, they just overgeneralizing of the locality or probably just reducing it to a more political narrative that reinforce just merely about the identity and nationalism. It is good. Somehow we can see it is really nice just for standards about the nationality, but the problem is again about the ultra nationalism is also can be one of the dangerous idea. Maybe I don't know exactly. And then the second one is about the problematic form of the homogenization. Somehow they trapped us in the past 32 years ago upon the doctrine of developmentalisms, or we call it like pembangunanisms, because of philosophical way, and they still believe that one size fit all a solution to solve everything. But I think that philosophy is not only about the answering everything, but it's rather than the philosophy is better also in this position questionings of some things. So in this case that I can see the state productions of knowledge is also being as a part of the main issue on this center philosophy. And some also on the exotic aspects, thinkings and also searchings about everything's in the past, and also exercisings about the specific indigenous cultures. But I guess they just capturing the partial area, and somehow they just reducing only one of the value or probably wisdomings some things, but when the indigenous people they have to face some of ecological degradations or probably developmentalisms by the capitalist productions, somehow they do not want to speak loudly. They just stealing from the value, stealing about the exoticization of the culture, but they do not want to think against how that the Nusantara philosophy can against of capitalisms, against about the climate change degradation, for examples. And the problem of the romanticizing the past and glorifying the future is somehow also making some of them there's a color still in the dilemma when you say about the peripheral dilemmas, and also lack of the proper philosophical. I think it is like the secondary problems, um, and then very limited on the language, lack of professional peer review process. But this is likely when we're trying to mismatch about the Western's regulation on the publications. So I think this is like the secondary, and then this is the more importance about this. What is the alternative? The Innocent philosophy. The problem is again about the debate of the native speakers. Somehow, when we make a new events, for example, likely in the conference on the Nusantara philosophy, mostly how that the non-native speakers is being also some of question that is we still have to legitimate that is who can speak about the Nusantara philosophy. It should be Indonesian speaker or probably on the outset, but I think we have to against this supporter of it. Embracing of diversity means that we also think back against that Nusantara philosophy also still trapped that on the repeat circles back again. When they think a lot of the peripheral conditions, they're also making a new centers and somehow still trapped that on the identities. That is maybe, for example, from the specific regions, but how that we think about the whole of the many cultures and then reducing only one of this big of the only one of the terms. So the another alternative we can also talk Nusantara philosophy. After all, it's probably talking about the island studies, critical island studies. Nusa mean islands and Antara or probably means in the big winds. So it means that it's trying to suggesting that the idea of Nusantara philosophy it is not in the rigid definitions, but also most likely in a relational way, as well as Rodinal mentions about the archipelagic thinking. It's the same like the how a Caribbean philosopher um, also promotes about the archipelagic ideas, trying to invite us thinking again, re-articulate philosophy from more in between the space between the many islands and also um, in that way. So history, I guess, it is also really important. After we know from you a lot of knowledge circulations, because of history as well as archipelagic productions, because of the knowledge circulation. It is not only coming from the inside, but because of in the past we face many of events, for example, historical events from I guess the commercializations, colonization, industrial development, and something like that. So in the past, the history as well as mediums, the history as well as the way to producing to mobilizing of the knowledge itself. For example, in Indonesia, we know about the differentiations of the theory of evolutions back then, comparisons between the Darwinians and also the Wallace. The Wallace talking about the I'm so sorry, Malay archipelago, and also and that way according to a charter that is about the decolonizing the governance means that in spatial way Indonesians thinking trying to make the archipelago as well as a more than the geographical concept, I guess. So like Indonesians also making the idea from this the peripherals coming from the fragmented of the anti-colonial relationship. So it means that the idea of the island also needs to be more the selfless. Today we're living in more a digital way. For example, the idea of islands is also changing every day. So relational way is one of the best thinking. So this is one of the geospatialities or probably a geographical way, but in the term of the biological way. The separate way also making how that they, especially people, they have their different perspective of thinking. So as you mentioned about the situated knowledge is also coming not only from the political perspective, but also about especially coming from the multicultural way. Rather than we also talking about the multicultural way, also coming from the multilateral way. So the many the ethnical groups means that when we're trying to exploring or mappings of the on Indonesian's philosophy, it is really differs. So Nusantara is probably can be as one of the specialist map of maybe course, but the problem is how that the inside of the peripheral we still having the more peripheral way, and then we also facing some of the problems because of when we look back some of the publication at least 10 years ago, we faced many of the disaster because of we affected by the ring of fire circulation. So facing more about the disaster also affecting how that we think about our relations between the mountain, between the seas, and also between the land itself. And then we're facing a lot of mountains here, so maybe a fire solutions. But somehow when we looks back about the people who live in the Borneo or probably in the Sulawesi or probably in on the Papua, and they do not really links with the mountains of fire. So probably somehow Indonesian philosophy defining themselves as well as the differentiation of cultural and also geographical way. So it is probably we can share same as well as the archipelagic philosophy, thinking again about the Caribbean philosophy, Indians oceanic philosophy, also coming from the island itself. So generally, I would like to speak again about the archipelagic thinking as well as one of proposals to Nusantara philosophy if they want to think a lot more about it. And then this is from the David Sander and also Jonathan Pugh about the islands as liminals and also transgressive space. And then not only that, the islands it is always still a minor in the idea of the Western's dominations of philosophy. According to Deleuze, also thinking about the differentiation between the continentals and also islands in this idea of desert islands. So island somehow also can be as well as one of new peripheral philosophy probably because of now we're facing a lot of problems and also opening more about the non-humans knowledge likely in the more than humans word of thinking and also facing more debates on the climate change and many idea coming from it. And then what we can learn from the Peripheral philosophy? First, Nusantara philosophy is still being a pessimistic philosophy, I guess, because of they look like the optimistic, but they still unsatisfied with their on the methodological way and somehow also being like the peripheral messianic ideas because of they believe in the future could be the better by using the past of the value likely in the theologicals and also teleologicals and also determinations of the value which is also still problematic at the same times. So customization of the value or or probably popularized by the idea of the filsafat tersembunyi or probably we can call it as well as the hidden philosophy. Somehow it is still likely in the second order of the anthropological research. We just read from the anthropological evidence, trying to philosophizing it it by themselves. So the problem is again, Sandra philosophy need to think again about the strongly limited of the knowledge regulations because they only accepting the knowledge from the past. In fact, that the knowledge is always developing, moving, and even that there is mobilizing by many. So what is the next of peripheral philosophy? I think we need to recognize again source of the knowledge coming from the many areas, not only from the humans, but also inspired by non-humans, computational data who knows, many area of the technological mediations, which is always coming from that. The problems likely how that the Japanese philosophy somehow also romanticizing in the past. For example, when the judge geologists coming from the Java, especially from the Yogyakarta, they're trying to search again about the continental drift theory, or probably we know as well today in the contemporary geology called like the plate tectonic theory. They come to Indonesia, learns how that the Javanese peoples think about their relations between the seas, between the land and also the mountains. But somehow Indonesian people today simplistic that Western is coming from the Javas, for example. But I think it is really naive because of the blend of the knowledge that is coming from the circulations, coming from the many areas. But now we have to decolonize. I mean, it's like decolonize means that we have to aware again and again about this source of knowledge, that how that the knowledge is still political way. So, in the end, that the peripheral philosophy can be defined as a situational knowledge at the same time, decolonial understanding, and then also expanding source of the thoughts. So, this is like knowledge productions probably. Rodinal, maybe me, myself, and some of our friends making knowledge productions on the conferences. So I don't know exactly if it's a part of the knowledge circulation or not. And yes, we routinize annual conference, but yes, we still need to learn a lot of the Nusantara philosophy, what is the future of it, and then how that is the next of directions. But it's well as a part of the peripheral philosophy or not. Um, Thank you. I'm so sorry, it's just a little bit long, but thank you for listening my presentation. Thank you, Radinal. I back to you.
Thank you very much. You are welcome, Maswa. Before we enter the Q&A sessions, I think we need to hear from Katarzyna regarding your critical remarks, yeah, because we need to have a clear understanding on how your proposal on the circulations of knowledge, yeah, the circular knowledge productions, yeah, uh, regarding what has already mentioned by Maswa, that people in Indonesia, when they do philosophy, when they develop what's so-called indigenous philosophy, they are still trapped in the uncanny methodology, how to do philosophy differently from the anthropology, because we claim that our works is deeper than the anthropology itself, but and in the reality, yeah, we make it more trivial, and we just follow the uncanny methodology with the unfinished things with the Nusantara philosophy itself. But I a bit disagree with Maswa claim that Nusantara philosophy is pessimistic here. I think it can be more optimistic if and only if, yeah, we handle the Nusantara philosophy in terms of its methodological foundations uh, seriously in the way our institutions work. But let's hear from Katarzyna. Please give your critical remarks on Maswa's previous presentations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, well, thank you very much for your excellent presentation. As you saw, I was noting and noting and noting, and I feel a bit strange about when you ask me about critical remarks. I have rather friendly comments, but oh, sorry, but I find I find this proposal very interesting and and your approach very interesting, and but a bit tricky in the sense, and smart, maybe not tricky but smart. It's smart. It's how to how because this I sorry for pronunciation, Nusandra philosophy, yeah, is a project of Indonesian philosophy which looks like all those identitarian models. Yeah, let's do Indonesian philosophy, and it has state support. Yeah, and Indonesian identity is in question. Yeah, so, and you adequately pointed to challenges. I totally agree. And then you and you use that concept of archipelago thinking. Yeah, which actually overturns all those premises of Nusandra philosophy, but you want to maintain the term. Yeah, because actually, And actually, this is my question, because that idea of archipelago thinking, yeah, you share with Caribbean authors, as you said, yeah, is meaning to grasp fluidity, diversity. It you have You pointed to those emerging of those subcenters and those philosophical centers which oppress or at least make less visible other discourses of other groups. Yeah, you are talking a lot about the role of Java philosophy. Yeah, so how do you manage it? Why to maintain that actually national concept of philosophy uh, instead of simply overthrowing it?
Right. Thank you very much, Belinska, for your questions. I mean, it is really insightful, the comment, because of the problem is that we don't have like the one of, maybe it is like the guidance, because of on my paper that I published last year's, I just trying to mapping out by using some of the technologies like in the Google Scholar, or probably the Scopus, the database, as well as your mentions about that we need to look back about the knowledge circulation, how that this knowledge is just coming from, and also developed by whom. And then when I search, it is almost likely a thousands the publication, and mostly they don't taking seriously about the terms of Nusantara, just but specific way, just trying to make the philosophizings of the culture on the specific of the area, for example, like in the Java or probably in the Bali. But the overgeneralizings, they just claiming it again, as well as the Nusantara, as well as the peaks of the more geographical areas. I don't know, but this just looks like our problems, or probably my problems, when I try to interpret again of the Nusantara philosophy. So when we would like to propose about the Nusantara philosophy, it means we just have the two options. First, we're looking back about the past, how that we defining of the Nusantara. Somehow people believe Nusantara coming from the idea of the past, when Indonesia is no more about the states ideology, spirited by many kingdoms in the past. And then the spirit of Nusantara is just also talking about the expanding the kingdom area. I mean, it's just like a bit about the imperialistic in the traditional way. I'm so sorry talking like this one. And then the second one, when we defining again about Nusantara philosophy, in the internal of Indonesian philosophy, they has their own debate. The first debate is about the naming. Probably Odi would like choosing about the Nusantara philosophy, because Nusantara philosophy trying to covering about the idea not only Indonesia as the state, but the before the 1945, before of the Independence Day. But the somehow in the contemporary debate like today, Indonesian scholar think it is better to only use the name of Indonesians philosophy, because of there is covering area after the 1945. But the problem is again, either of Nusantara philosophy or probably Indonesian philosophy, the problem is about the legacy of the developmentalism's ideas. Because of somehow people also just oversimplify. I mean, like the over simplicistics about the value just behind of Nusantara philosophy, or probably Indonesian philosophy. When we search back on the Google Scholar, for example, they just preferring on the Pancasila, for example, as well as the state ideology of philosophy. What is wrong with it? Yes, we can just judge it uh, by what, for example. So I know there is the problems of it. So that is why I just proposing this again, why we don't look back about the archipelagic thinkings. Why there is importance? Because of I see today, when you say about there is philosophy is also a change the world. It is there is not only about the producing of the abstract ideas. For example, the problem of Indonesia today, it is about the developings of economic way. We have a disparities islands between the main islands and also the small islands areas. We have a differentiation of the economic way, property, for example, the access of the infrastructure, the access of, um, for example, of the education. From the education, we can learn and also producing more of the knowledge, for example. So I don't know. I feel that now it is can be one of the prioritizings when we talk about decentralized philosophy because of the changing of the geopolitical area can also inspire us to find the another options, probably also reflections, probably also coming from the political philosophy, right? Like the other day, we just reclaim Indonesia as well as the democratic state, for example. But I don't know. Politically, I cannot say more. Maybe there may be some people here can add more. Yes, I think it is all from me. The balance guy. That is the only problem when we speak against about the peripheral way. So, I don't know, but thank you very much.
Okay, Katarzyna, before we move to the Q&A
Yes,
sessions,
I would
please
like
add
to
your
thank you
comment.
very much. Thank you very much. Obviously, there is that tension, yeah, we all struggle with, and and Audie, concerning methodology, because you mentioned that we both did not address it. It is a challenge for, I think it's a global challenge because when we are talking about relational ontologies, we don't know what we are talking about actually. And it is those new, we have at the moment ideas of new methodologies, which should be, or which process of working out. And we are in the process of working them out. And there is not a simple, there is not a simple question. Obviously, if we're talking about those alternative ways of doing philosophy than traditional ones. Thank you.